Hello everyone, I'm Jasmine, aka Gladiatorinsweats, and I'm here to talk about the yellow human Wavespell that begins today, January 25th, and concludes on February 6th of 2019 this year. So yeah, I just want to say welcome to those new and/or returning to my channel. I hope you guys are blessed and doing well, and I hope that this reaches you well as always. So yeah, just getting straight into what I really want to talk about. If I'm looking down, I'm looking at some of my notes, so I apologize in advance if that's distracting. So, in really discussing this energy, I feel like before we even get into what I want to discuss, you can kind of look back on, I believe it was my video for the new moon in Capricorn for the partial solar eclipse, because I feel like this energy was the galactic signature or the kin energy for that day. It was like this yellow human sort of energy of us really tapping into this sort of emptiness or vessel-like openness of receptivity, of opening ourselves to receiving the abundance that we are hoping to pull in. But it was a lot more than that. You could go and refer back to that video, I believe. I believe it was that video, but if it wasn't, it was one of the few videos I had before this most recent one. But I digress. I really want to talk about this Wavespell because it's really coming in after we've had this really, what I feel, a really deep sort of closing sort of chapter, and not necessarily just a closing, but I'm feeling more I'm trying to really find the human words, or the English words rather, to sort of describe the way I'm really starting to see these things, and not necessarily as just like a closing, but of really a shifting into different, dimensions or pieces of ourselves, so that, we're ultimately doing this to bring it all into, ourself. So if I can try and talk about it more from that perspective, that's more resonant for me. So, during this period, we're really pulling into this aspect of ourselves, of our choice of being able to come into this present awareness where we're able to access the creative potential of being able to see the options and the possibilities that we maybe aren't able to see when we limit ourselves. We feel disconnected, from source or from spirit, from our connection to, really knowing intuitively what it is that we should do, or the move we should make, or what's really right for us, or really just being able to perceive our experiences again in a more healthful way. So really getting into what this Wavespell is about, I'll just talk about the oracle readout. And so it begins with the human being supported by the hand, which is about accomplishment and knowledge. So in this context, I'm feeling this about being supported by us using our faculties, using our tools that we have accessible to us. All of these tools that, especially, those of us that have been on this, journey and, path of building our spiritual practice and, our spiritual growth and understanding. We are able to tap into our tools and really even just tapping into our body, because I'm not even necessarily thinking about tools such as cards or something, but it could be, talking about tarot or whatever it is that we're using. But I'm thinking more about internal, of using, our senses and being able to use all of these parts of ourself that are within, being a receptor, being a transmitter, being, just really being able to use ourselves in all of these different ways that are accessible to us as we are, becoming more aware of these tools being accessible to us. But challenging this, strengthening this, is the wind, representative of spirit and communication. And so, in seeing this being like the shadow side of wind, of feeling, miscommunication, or maybe not really fully understanding the messages that you're picking up on, or maybe it's not even, for me, necessarily just a misreading, but even just feeling disconnected, feeling like I'm not picking up on the messages. I'm sorry if I'm looking between different screens. I'm trying to make sure I'm not sure if I should look at the camera, should I look at the screen? I'll just look at the screen. And so here I'm really feeling it's us addressing these perceptions of feeling like we're not getting this communication, of us feeling like we're not getting these messages, or again, like I said, of maybe us feeling like we're getting messages, or maybe feeling we're not perceiving them correctly, or any of that sort of energies I feel of us communication. I feel like even maybe our own outward expression of the way that we communicate our own needs and our own emotions, really maybe doing that more from a truthful, more authentic perspective too. Which again, we'll talk more about this in detail as I'll probably most likely read the passage, because I really feel like it does a really good job of really summarizing a lot of these shadows that it's not necessarily like these only come up now, but I feel like, again, this is really coming up and being dredged up, I feel like now, not just because of this Wavespell energy, but also because of the cards that I pulled and really the resonance that I feel even with the numerology of this year. So to kind of jump into it even further, I'll just read some of the notes that I have and we'll get into the cards. So just a little bit of the notes I did write was, as we've been freeing ourselves from our attachments, we're, poised now for self-liberation. It will require discipline, courage, and a firm hold of our frequency management and attunement taking place. So I felt this being, connected to the attunement moon month that we're currently in, but not just that, like I said, I feel like we're in this deep process of, attuning ourselves, of really not just clearing ourselves, but really honing ourselves to our home frequency so that we're able to further and better perceive and discern between our true feelings, the feelings of something coming in out, like you know what I mean, just being able to discern what's true for us, what's not, what's coming up as a projection, just really being able to discern the different experiences that we do have in our life, the different types of experiences and relations that we have, because I do see everything obviously as a relation between obviously ourself and some sort of entity, being, what have you. So yeah, just getting into the cards that I did pull for us. I just really, as I always do, ask for the most important, the most pertinent clarity or insight that the collective needs to receive at this time. So the cards that we did pull, which it really did further emphasize and confirm again these feelings and these themes of self-sufficiency, in a sense of us recognizing the feelings of lack that we feel, the feelings of even like emotional dependency or neediness. So the cards that I did pull was the Page of Cups with the Three of Swords. I'm not sure if it's going to be reversed, so either way. But here, you can definitely see this is about, or for me, about emotional outbursts probably throughout these couple of weeks. Not necessarily just outbursts, but I'm seeing this as these messages really becoming very full, very much wanting to get our attention. And these messages are very much pertaining to our feelings of, the heart wounds. And as I've been talking about in one of my other videos, where I feel like this is even about the perception of our wounds and, the things that we're feeling too, or even the communications or miscommunications, everything having to do with that sort of mental or thought processes here. But what I really did feel from both these cards together was this, like I said, feeling of the emotional messages that are trying to get our attention, that we're really needing to tune into, having to deal with the ways in which we try to cover up our heart wounds, I feel maybe with some sort of, ideas or thoughts or beliefs, like I was talking about when I was referring to the yellow human energy of us dealing with the coping mechanisms, and as realizing we're coming to the point where we're outgrowing these coping mechanisms. It's not necessarily that it's about being like bad, but it's we're coming to the point where we're recognizing some of these things aren't so healthy for us, or they're really keeping us from growing into our, our now potential, what wants to blossom and be within us at this point in time. And so, not only that, but also the bottom of the deck card that we did have was this 3 with the Empress. And so I felt like this, in referring to the numerology, I felt like this was having to do with that sort of like life path 3, like that number 3 sort of energy, having to do with abundance and sufficiency and harvest. And I'm a life path 3 myself. And so for me, I've really clicked into this feeling even of like, again, these solar plexus sort of energies of, our belief in ourselves and our power to it's not even necessarily about manifestation just so much, but for me, it's even just about, a feeling of sufficiency in ourselves, a feeling of fullness of ourselves, that not even necessarily that I'm just self-sufficient, but even a feeling of if there is something that I do need that I'm not able to even provide for myself, it will be provided for me. I will be able to receive it, but I'm also able to be abundant within my own self too as well. And so, not just that, but like the bottom of the deck was the Magician. So together, this is highly for me about not just the mercurial side of this being about our mental and the way that we can use our thoughts and our attention and our awareness to tune into different things, but also having to do with the way in which we are communicating, I feel like broadcasting our needs, the way we're broadcasting a certain frequency too. I really felt that because of when you look at this card, or in most depictions of this card in the traditional sense, you do see a waterfall. And so in reference to even the outpouring of these emotions, or not even just the outpouring, but I'm just thinking of the emotions and seeing that, a lot of this is having to do with the generation of emotions with the Empress. It's a feeling based thing. So here I feel like it's about us acknowledging the feelings of lack that we feel, or maybe even our feelings of external lack, feelings of, financial resistance and those sorts of things. I feel like we can recognize where maybe this can be tied to a lot of our emotional feelings of lack. So that's really where I'm feeling this is really about, this being like, we need to address that. Like, that's what we really need to address that. And I feel like that's not just only because of the astrology, like, with the North Node being in Cancer, but also just in thinking about also just the current, like, collective sort of theme of, like, manifestation. Like, that's really, like, a thing. I mean, that's always been a thing, obviously, for us to accumulate, wealth and things and, all that sort of stuff. But even as we're, or if you, depending on what crowd you're in, but obviously maybe if you're following my channel, you may be seeing, like, the starting to see the popular culture taking in these spirituality themes of, manifestation and abundance connected to our mental, our mental and our psyche and all of these sorts of things. And so, I mean, a lot of our discussion around, like, the law of attraction, or just really all of these ways in which we can work with the universal laws to manifest what it is that we want ultimately, we get into this sort of space of not understanding why maybe we're not manifesting the certain things that we want, why we're manifesting certain things just in the first place in general, of, why it feels so hard to get the things that we want, just like all of our questions surrounding us, how it is that we can access this, how it is that we can feel like we're in a need of something, but that it's not here and available for us. How is it that we can bridge that gap between feeling like we're unsupported, feeling like we're not connected, and the truth, which is that we are. And so that's about, I feel, again, addressing, those feelings of why it is we feel that way. Why do we feel this way? obviously the feeling is different for all of us, in a very personal way. But I feel a lot of this, and I'll refer to my notes now to talk a little bit about this, is obviously having to do with, our doubts and our fears, and I feel like this is also about, even maybe our feelings and our recognition to our just cultural feelings of lack, of our cultural feelings of a constant need for more and more and more, whether this is in a sort of wealth sort of idea, or whether it's knowledge, feeling like there's always a need for more and more and more knowledge. There's just, especially within our Western cultures, there's a very great emphasis on more. If you have more than something, that's good. If you have little of something, it's inherently means it's inferior. The more you have of anything means it's amazing, right? So we're starting to unpack that. Obviously, I feel like within our culture, there's been a thing that we've been talking about at least particularly maybe within my generation of, mindfulness, and of, especially like the minimalism sort of trends that are starting to take place now too. But yeah, like I said, I want to read these notes, and I guess I'll just read them, and because I just straight kind of wrote it. And so it says, peep the messages of our heartaches and pains, emotional outbursts, possible emotional outpouring, the doubts, fears, and untruths possibly showing themselves, tied to our abundance and prosperity, recognition of our ability to retrieve our power and therefore our own innate abundance of our emotional wealth, sensitivity and recognition of our pains of separation or illusion, nurturing of grace. The emotions water the fields, i.e., the emotional frequency calls in the water. And that's when I was writing and referring to the emotions that we're broadcasting. What is that we're broadcasting? And that is what is really pulling in. And so it's acknowledging, it's healing ourself. It's tuning into the self. And I meant to, or not even meant to, I will be posting maybe a blog post, but most likely it'll be an Instagram post, because that's just where everyone tends to go. So I just want to actually post a little bit on some of the messages that I received, even having to do with this, and just kind of getting into it maybe a little bit deeper as far as like how much we look outside of ourselves, or how much we even try to over intellectualize things, to try and like overcompensate for us, not paying attention to our emotions or all of these other, faculties within ourselves that are here to help us, help us navigate. Our mind is not the sole tool here for us to navigate. And so obviously that's something that I feel we've known. So again, it's not necessarily about these truths necessarily being new, but there's a newness to them, because there's an uncovering and an unburying of them, I feel, here going on with a lot of us, where it's a recognition of, for me at least, a lot of these feelings that we've already felt, especially as kids, and it's an acknowledgement of even a lot of those, again, the conditioning that takes place as we're in this world, and as we're in this, really, this, it's like an insane house, and it's that way, by design. And so as we get, lost in the madhouse, it can be very, hard for us to get our groundings. And that's really the whole process of this mastery, is of us finding and realizing and accepting that the outside is going to be crazy, because that's that is what is actually helping us to even recognize what even needs to be addressed. What is it that wants to be experienced and ventured into? So again, I digress. I'll go ahead and finish what I wrote. I just wrote and finished with transforming these pains into treasures, into connection and reunion of ourself, and completed it with Life Path 3 issues, because it's a number 3 year. I was just recognizing that sort of connection. So not just that, but I believe that this yellow human energy is resonant with the number 12. So again, you can see that sort of number 3 resonance there with the 12 coming through, of this being more of a complex stability of us building up on a higher mind level. This is our entry point of us, beginning to work with these I don't want to call them necessarily outside faculties, but of really of something that's outside of our older reference points. That's really, for me, I guess, an easier way to sort of frame it. And so, yeah, that's really what I was feeling here, is of us recognizing these feelings of our emotional neediness, the wounds that we feel of needing some sort of emotional validation from other people, or not necessarily even just a validation, but I feel like there's just an outside seeking that a lot of us can maybe tend to go to as a sort of unconscious measure to, cope. So, yeah, I just want to go ahead and read some of these passages. And again, as y'all see, like, my children stay breaking my glasses. So, contacts might need to be a thing for me again. So, excuse the frames again. So yeah, let me go ahead and read these passages and conclude. The shadow of Ebb, which is the name that they have here for the yellow human. The shadow of the yellow human holds issues of lack, which can manifest as insufficiency or emotional neediness. In your natural state of being, the receptive chalice, you may experience the appearance of separation, being fearful of spiritual, or physical lack. Perhaps you're holding onto subconscious patterns about lack, how there is never enough love, support, attention, time, or money. In this shadow, you may see your chalice as being half empty instead of half full. Offer your gratitude to the universe for what you do have. Examine and change these beliefs and programs. In your process of fulfillment, your beliefs are all that can limit you. There are many ways to work with these shadows of insufficiency. Subliminal tapes and affirmations are one means. Transpersonal approaches, such as process-oriented psychology, shamanism, or Jungian dream work, can also help. Perhaps you project these feelings, believing that someone else is responsible for your lack. So if so, remember that no one else can fill your cup. Only you and Spirit can do that. Look at how you can be more self-nurturing. Take inventory to discover what brings you joy and fulfillment. Whatever it is that will bring you abundance. Whatever that is will also bring you abundance. Working with the yellow human can change your subconscious attitudes and bring profound insights. Another shadow can be seen as over or undervaluing your intellect. In a society that has a tendency to overvalue the rational mind, you may have inadvertently limited your ability to receive the intuitive gifts of heart knowing and higher mind. Or perhaps you don't fully appreciate the function of your mind, having a tendency to feel inadequate about your intellectual abilities. Yellow Human asks you to befriend the mind, to embrace its magnificence and its ability to help you become a fully realized human being. This process of transmutation may bring dysfunctional mental patterns to the surface. Among these may be confusion and anxiety, the recurring patterns of trying to mentally control and figure it out. Confusion usually indicates that the rational mind is looking for understanding within the limited patterns of its memories and learned beliefs. This may create unconscious distortions. However, fixed positions naturally attract their opposites, and eventually they will assist you in bringing your issues to clarity. And I will conclude this, but I actually just wanted to even just add my own personal experience with this. As of yesterday, because it was really, I guess, yesterday where I was really able to put this into practice, like within the moment, very consciously. At least it was like, for me, like one of those first times consciously where I recognized I was able to break out of that old paradigm that I'd been stuck in, and it took a while, and so I guess I just really want to talk about it because I wanted to talk about how it's possible and how it really is having to do with us acknowledging what's consistently coming up. It's not about us everything's about discernment, but ultimately, especially when it's a repetitive story or underlying theme, this is something that wants to come through and be seen, and so for me, in recognizing, one of my own sort of shadows with emotional neediness and wanting to figure things out or have control on things. Here, I, went into the whole pattern of, one of my oldest patterns is, people don't listen to me. And they don't do what I say, therefore that means they don't respect me, and that means I'm not appreciated, and that means, I could go on and on, because, my mind will go on and on with, these old feelings that ultimately gets dredged up and applied to this current, situation, and it doesn't actually apply. And so, my mind at this point is not able to discern that. And so, I recognized that. And so that's the first step, recognizing that, hold up, like this cannot be it. Especially for me, when especially when it's super repetitive at some point, hopefully you're able to get so tired of it where it's like, I have to look at it a different way. I have to find a different way to deal with it, because what I've been doing has not been working. And so that's ultimately kind of what always happens with me. I'm super stubborn, and not even just that. I know that a lot of things are just super hardwired. And so I don't want to carry any sort of shame having to do with that. Don't know if you see the shirt. But, yeah, so, in that moment, I had to take that moment to stop my mind. And the only way to do that was to get into the breath, to really stop thinking, by bringing my focus to my breath, by doing some of the breathing techniques that I've been working with, and not just doing that, but once I was able to bring myself to this sort of stillness, the centeredness, and using the one technique that I actually used in one of the rituals, one of the ceremonies that I did for one of the moons. So I use that technique, to really even bring myself further, into oneness, and separate myself, not even necessarily separate myself, but really get myself to silence the mind, at least enough to where I could pull in truth. I could pull in and really inquire about what's really taking place, or at the very least, I could bring in other possibilities. And that's what I did. I within that space, I opened myself, what are the other possible perspectives here? What is it that I'm maybe not even seeing, or not necessarily just not seeing, but not tuning myself into. And so through that, I was able to, the first part is just recognizing that, within any, relation or any sort of conflict between two beings, it's like, there's more than me. So there was that first sort of acknowledgement for me where it's like, wait, first of all, I know that I'm going through things right now. Maybe there's a recognition that I can have that this person's going through things too. And so for me, that brought me a little bit further into compassion. And I was able to, from there, further even process, well, okay, this person may be like, okay, what is the common underlying ground that can be found through this sort of conflict? From there, I was able to recognize that, okay, we're both just trying to understand each other. Like, there is no actual, like, true animosity. We're both misunderstanding because we're both projecting. I was able to sort of really open myself to those possibilities, which, now that I come to know, that's exactly the case, is that we both have these, emotional things that, lead us into these unconscious patterns of acting and behaving as ways of coping and ways of dealing with emotional stress. And so, with that, I was able to, do what I was able to do to bring myself into, a centered motion, and to deal with what needed to be dealt with at that point. But again, I really want to bring that up as a perfect example of how, we can get so lost in not even just being right or wrong, but being lost in our feelings, not just necessarily our feelings, but what is it that we're actually trying to even say? What is it that our feelings are even saying? What is actually going on? The very deeper feeling or lesson that's being shown here. And so, conclusion for me with even some of that situation was of I felt like I wasn't listening, or he wasn't listening to me, and it really was a being truthful. I mean, I cannot speak for him or that person, whatever. I can speak for myself, and I can say that I wasn't fully listening from an inner listening. I wasn't fully listening from a higher perspective of what it was that he was actually trying to convey, or, really get across to me. The same for me. I wasn't really fully communicating what I was really trying to get across either. I was really just able to start recognizing, not necessarily the faults that took place, but really starting to recognize the web that created the illusion of not even just miscommunication, but like I said, a complete spiral into, this person doesn't respect me, this person doesn't love me, just everything, the way in which it can really fully divulge into an explosion that way. And I say all this from complete experience, and, being able to learn not just from my experiences, but being able to master a lot of this is, I feel, really, not my sole purpose, but one of a really huge purpose of what I want to do with this channel and what I want to do with my work, in conveying why the work with ourself is so important. So, and not just that, and how it is doable, and how it is a process of, the accumulation of practice. It's not about an instant fix, it's about a continual practice of attending to ourselves, and of loving ourselves, and really learning who it is that we are, and what is it that we come in here with. As I talked about a while, I mean, I might have to come up with a quote about it, about it's not about us trying to change the game. It's we can work with what it is that we have. We don't really have to mod our character. We can learn to work with what we've got, and we can work and mold the character. And the same way you can add stats to your character with experience, right? But we don't need to, we don't have to shell out something crazy to add some sort of layer that really is already innately within us. So, yeah, excuse me, all that to say, I do want to finish this couple of paragraphs, and then we'll be done. So, yeah, the yellow human invites you to bring the higher faculties of mind to replace the limited patterns of the ego. This clarity of mind becomes a knowing that transcends thought. By connecting to a feeling, image, or metaphor of liberation, you can stand free of the cycling of these old memories and patterns. Then your mind becomes a sacred tool, an awakened friend and ally. So that's kind of essentially what I just explained there with my whole personal anecdote. But really, it's really about us really connecting to the feeling, and really us, again, acknowledging and engaging with these other faculties of our senses, instead of just limiting ourselves to our intellect, So, in another shadow of the yellow human, you may not fully understand what it means to be human. Perhaps you judge yourself as not having realized your full potential. In the illusion of human limitation, you may be surprised to discover what the realized human is designed to do. Being in human form at this time is a unique and precious gift. In this age, you have chosen to participate in a great shift, and you can utilize your human form to experience fully this unique opportunity. Yellow Human is preparing your circuits for complete transformation, readying them to receive the high-frequency pulses of the full embodiment of essence from spirit. Being fully human implies a body and a mind that are infused with expanded consciousness. This quickening of your subtle bodies and senses clears and aligns you with a more mythical intent. You may desire to support your physical process with extra love and allowance, giving special focus to diet and exercise. Rather than trying to transcend the body, look into massage, hatha yoga, and meditative dance forms such as Tai Chi, Aikido, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Sufi dancing, or the sacred movements or dances of the Russian mystic philosopher and teacher G.I. Gurdjieff? I apologize. Try meditation as a method of moving toward full body illusion. Oh, full body evolution. Oh my goodness. And remember that which you actively seek often comes most easily through your most unused channels of perception. So, oh goodness, yeah. Ooh, my words are getting kind of crazy there. So, yeah, ultimately, this is about us. This is about resonance, and that's really what I know the collective has been talking about a little bit, and I know that that's really, like I said, that's all about what this month has been about. But I feel like that's ultimately, as we're learning, it's about our own personal attunement. We've been working on this whole process of attuning ourselves to the outside world, of attuning ourselves to what's going on the outside, which is forever changing, forever in motion, and so it's not even necessarily that it's not fixed, because it's not necessarily that it needs to be, but it's not based on, it's based on like the projection as opposed to what's true for us. If you want to look at it in that sort of frame, the way I'm kind of seeing it is like, if you're standing here and the sun's here, we're like looking at the shadow instead of like we're not looking that way and receiving from there, and then being able to decide with conscious choice what it is that we want to do, how it is that we want to behave. So, yeah, that's really what I wanted to really get across with this video. And, all the craziness with my words and stuff this week, definitely gotta work on that. So, yeah, I think that's really all that I wanted to read from the books and really from my notes and from the cards and whatnot. So, yeah, I did want to just conclude this with that this will be finishing up with I believe the new moon in Aquarius on the 4th. So it'll be within the last couple of days of this wave spell. And so I feel like that's definitely, for me, even a very perfect conclusion for us being able to break free of whatever it is that we feel like we need to break free or break out of a rut of. And so I know I have some notes on it, but I know there's like a lot of beautiful fire energy that revs up, to really get us, just raring to go against our old values and old ways of doing things, and even our old ways of accumulating wealth and old beliefs about wealth, and just a lot of this stuff about like the sense of like old versus new taking place here. And so even when we're talking about that, before I close off, because we're discussing this about it being like a spiritual war and a spiritual battle, and it is. And like when I try to talk about how like we can engage with this from like a standpoint of like not being a victim, it's not necessarily to me about not acknowledging that it is a battle, because it is, but I think of it more in the sense of not necessarily just like a battle of like someone needing to win out of it. I'm seeing it more about like it's like the battle again, it's the friction that takes place, and through that friction, through those creative sort of differences, as they're going through it, through an elevation, we're able to really create that third. That's how we get that creation of the third, is through that friction, that meshing and merging and integration. And it is that process of the fire and the chemical transformation that takes place. And so excuse me, I'm really feeling like, as things do feel difficult, not just within our own personal lives, within the collective's life, within our nation, because I know within my own personal country, we have our governmental shutdown taking place, and that's affecting so many people's lives in so many real ways. And so I also know that it can be very challenging to talk about a lot of these things, and how it is that how can we support ourselves, how can we it's very challenging in this time. So I know that it's not necessarily about pointing any sort of fingers at people for what they're going through. So that's just, I guess, a disclaimer in case anyone was feeling that way. But we're all going through these things, but we're able to see through this friction, I'm hoping, how it is that we're able to empower ourselves, how it is that we can free ourselves, not necessarily just from our current struggle, but from the underlying root that ultimately like creates the struggle so that you're able to get the root out. Like that's just the way I sort of see it. It's like I just think of the way like I just think of shadows as wanting to be integrated. I don't see separation as something that, I mean, it does want to be separate because it has its own intelligence, but the way I see it is like there's always an underlying you know, urge, draw to come back. You know, that's why I even can feel like that's why there's this sort of idea of the opposite attraction, is that ultimately that charge always pulls it back. So, you know, I guess I hope that that's, you know, as they were talking about metaphors of liberation, I hope that, you know, not just that, but that the message and just the cards and everything was able to bring some sort of clarity, or you know, maybe just some sort of insight about what's taking place, maybe within your own life, or maybe what you see others are experiencing. So yeah, if you watched this full 40-minute and 40-second video, thank you so much for tuning in, being here with me. And yeah, as always, you can check out my Instagram at gladiatorinsweats and my website at gladiatorinsweats.com if you would like a personal reading or a consultation. And yeah, I'm currently working a little bit more on my website and wanting to cultivate, like I said, not just so much about the readings, but really wanting to create the more of a session. It's more of a holding of space, so that it's not just a reading. Like we're able to really unpack some of the things that we're dealing with, maybe from a fresher perspective, or just from a perspective that's really wanting to come through, but you're maybe not able to see because of, you know, having, you know, you're in the thick of it. And so I really feel like that's maybe something I can work really well with, is being able to help people in their centers of crises, and helping them be able to see from, you know, be able to receive that sort of eagle-eye perception, being able to integrate that, and kind of help them pull them out of it a little bit to, you know, be able to make the decisions they need to, or what have you. But yeah, I really hope that you guys are doing well, and really being able to make the most of it, and not just necessarily make the most of it, but even as the passage says, and even as I've been talking on my Instagram of, you know, the self-care, and about that being in a very real way of, you know, taking rest when we need to, you know, eating when we need to, not eating certain things when we need to, of, you know, drinking water when we need to, of, you know, removing ourselves from certain situations or energies when we need to, you know, doing what we need to as we're building up, not necessarily to me where I see it's more of a thicker skin, but it's more of a resilient skin, more of a skin that's able to bounce and flow with the comings and goings with, you know, events and circumstances. So yeah, I hope you guys, as always, like I said, are doing all right. And as always, I hope that we're going to be doing well throughout all of this. Ultimately, the way I feel about this is that the victory is always, or not necessarily just always, but the victory is inevitable. So it's really just about us going through the process of us really being able to just reach that finish line, per se. So I believe, trying to just think of when I'll post my next video. Most likely will be like the new moon in Aquarius. So yeah, if you guys want some more like daily content, that's where you should follow me on Instagram. So otherwise, until the next one, you guys, much love and many blessings to you all, and peace.